Hidden stories of the American Revolution. Whispers beneath the gunpowder sky. Beneath the flags, beneath the drums. History often speaks in grand declarations. It remembers the crack of muskets at Lexington, the ringing signatures on parchment in Philadelphia, and the triumphant march at Yorktown. It celebrates generals, congressmen, and founding fathers, the men whose names are printed in textbooks and etched into monuments. But beneath those loud, echoing chapters, there lies another America, a quieter one, a stranger one, an America built not only by the celebrated leaders we know, but also by the invisible hands we rarely acknowledge. The American Revolution was not simply a clash of armies. It was a struggle of spies, sabotagers, runaways, traitors, forgotten women, enslaved fighters, mystical preachers, and children who carried secrets like fire in their pockets. Behind every famous battle, a dozen unseen stories unfolded. Stories of taverns where conspiracies brewed stronger than ale. Stories of coded quilts hung on washing lines. Stories of soldiers who never fired a shot but changed the war forever. When we imagine the revolution, we often picture a proud and unified people rising together against tyranny. But the truth is both darker and far more fascinating. The colonies were fractured, families torn between loyalties, and neighbors driven to mistrust by rumors and fear. In many places, the revolution was not a war between two armies. It was a war inside people's own homes. Tonight, we journey into those hidden places. We travel to the dirt roads where secret riders galloped under moonlight with messages that could collapse empires. We step inside candlelit rooms where enslaved men plotted freedom by offering intelligence to British troops. We listen at the doorways where women, dismissed as unimportant, overheard the whispers that shaped nations. And we walk through forests where native tribes weighed impossible decisions, choosing between alliances that offered hope and destruction in equal measure. These are the stories that rarely make the headlines of history. Yet, without them, the revolution as we know it might never have succeeded. Settle in. The drums of war are distant here. Instead, we'll follow the quiet footsteps of the forgotten. Echoes in the taverns. Before rifles fired and flags were raised, revolution simmered in the dim corners of colonial taverns. The tavern was the true beating heart of the colonies, equal parts political arena, news station, and noisy gathering place. Travelers from distant towns brought rumors. Sailors carried word from Europe. Angry farmers muttered about rising taxes. One tavern in particular, perched on a muddy street in Boston, served as the birthplace of more radical ideas than any meeting hall. Here, a young barmaid named Abigail faced the kind of invisibility that turned into an unexpected power. No one paid attention to her as she refilled tankards and wiped tables, so conversations flowed freely around her. Late one night, she overheard two men in redcoats whispering about a shipment of gunpowder destined for a British stronghold. She memorized every detail, hid a note in the lining of her apron, and passed it quietly to her brother, a stable boy with revolutionary sympathies. That note traveled faster than any rider, moving from barn to barn, hand to hand, until a local militia intercepted the shipment days later. Abigail's name never made it into the newspapers. Her actions never earned the honor of speeches or medals. But the gunpowder her message saved armed hundreds of colonial fighters in the early days of war. The revolution, often seen as a stage for great men, was also held aloft by women whose names slipped through the cracks of recognition. The spy ring that nearly broke the empire. While battles raged in fields and forests, an entirely different war pulsed in the shadows. Spies threaded through cities and villages, leaving trails of coded letters, invisible ink, and elaborate disguises. One of the most remarkable networks operated deep inside British-controlled New York. Its agents were farmers, merchants, and ordinary citizens, people who seemed harmless enough to pass through the city unnoticed. They exchanged messages through laundry lines, burying letters in fields, and carving symbols into tree trunks. At the center of this web was a woman known only by an encrypted alias. She was never discovered, never identified, and never credited. Her intelligence warned the Continental Army of planned British raids, intercepted counter-spy operations, and saved the lives of countless soldiers. She was not a soldier, not a politician, not a man of influence. She was a ghost, and ghosts often reshape history more powerfully than kings. Her final message, delivered through a coded pattern in a discarded newspaper, revealed the movement of British troops preparing to ambush George Washington himself. Without her warning, Washington's command might have been crushed in a single blow. History celebrates Washington's leadership, but few know he lived because a nameless spy risked everything to save a revolution that did not yet guarantee her freedom.
Whispers of freedom from enslaved voices. Perhaps the most painful and powerful hidden stories come from those who lived in chains. Enslaved men and women were caught in a brutal paradox. Both sides of the war promised freedom, yet both sides often betrayed them. When the British offered emancipation to any enslaved person who fled their rebel masters and joined the crown, thousands took the chance. They navigated forests, swamps, and back roads under cover of darkness. Among them was a man called Cato, who became one of the most important couriers for the revolutionary spy ring. He sprinted through enemy territory with coded messages stitched into his clothes, slipping past British patrols who never once suspected that the quiet, enslaved messenger they ignored carried intelligence that could unravel their plans. He had no guarantee that the cause he served would reward him. He acted anyway, driven by hope, desperation, or perhaps the simple belief that even the smallest spark could ignite freedom. When the war ended, many of these men were abandoned by both sides. Yet their contributions left fingerprints on every battlefield, every negotiation, every victory. Their voices echo through history, quiet but unbroken. Native nations at the crossroads. The Revolution was not only a war between Britain and its colonies, it was a devastating turning point for native nations. Tribes across the continent were forced to choose alliances that offered uncertain futures. Some allied with the British, believing that a British victory would slow the relentless push of settlers into their lands. Others sided with the colonists, convinced that cooperation might offer protection in the years to come. Many tried desperately to stay neutral, only to be dragged into war by proximity or pressure. A remarkable story emerges from one Iroquois village where a young messenger named Satenka carried diplomatic letters between rival factions within her tribe. Her mission was not to fight, but to prevent bloodshed among her own people. She moved silently along forest trails, slipping past both British scouts and colonial patrols, trying to stitch together unity in a world tearing apart. Though her efforts could not stop the inevitable conflict, her courage preserved families and forged new alliances that survived after the war's devastation. These stories rarely appear in patriotic legends, yet they shaped the entire continent. Children of the Revolution. The Revolution was not merely a world of adults. Children carried messages, smuggled supplies, and learned early that survival required bravery beyond their years. One young boy in Philadelphia became known among soldiers as the Sparrow. Too small to be noticed, too quick to be caught, he scurried between encampments delivering coded notes inside hollow quills. Though dismissed as harmless, he mapped British patrol patterns simply by watching the streets day after day. His map, drawn with clumsy hands and childish ink, helped American forces plan a daring maneuver that cut the enemy's supply line during a critical week of the war. No official record mentions his name. His drawing was credited to a soldier decades older, yet the truth fluttered on the wings of the sparrow. The quiet return to peace. When the cannons finally cooled and treaties were signed, the revolution ended with celebration, but also with silence. Winter fields where battles had raged grew quiet again. Fireplaces filled with laughter where fear had once lived. And the hidden stories slipped back into the shadows. Some heroes returned to anonymity. Some found themselves forgotten in the very nation they helped form. Some lived to old age with quiet pride. Others died before their stories could be told. But history is not only the narrative of generals and founders. It is the collective heartbeat of countless ordinary people who acted when no one was watching, fought when no one thanked them, and sacrificed without expecting a place in the story. They are the whisper beneath the gunpowder sky. They are the hidden stories of the American Revolution.